Good morning. Welcome to the mayor, fellow councillors, administration staff, members of the gallery, and any viewers on Zoom or YouTube to the meeting of the Committee of the Whole on July 14th, 2026, starting at 9:30 a.m. of the Municipal Council of Jasper. Before we go any further, I want to remind everybody there's only 8 days left before July 22nd, which is the 2-year anniversary of the fire. The date's very significant to anyone who suffered a property loss in the fire who was insured because of the 2-year limitation date in the Limitations Act of Alberta. Unless you filed a statement of claim or have a valid extension of the limitation date with a binding agreement with your insurance company by July 22nd, you may have no way to enforce collection of any more insurance money. If the insurance company walks away, you may not be able to do anything about it. It's up to you to take care of this. Get some advice if you're unsure about it. If you're not covered, it could be one of the biggest financial mistakes of your life. In 8 days, it will be too late. Talk to your friends and neighbors about it. It'd be terrible if somebody gets left behind on this. And with that, I call the meeting to order. Are there any additions to the agenda? Yes, Councillor Conscript.
Yeah, I'd like to bring residential parking into discussion.
Okay, we'll add that to the agenda. With that addition, can we have an approval of the agenda from any councillor? Councillor Frechette? All in favor? None opposed? That's passed. Can we have the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from June 23rd, 2026? Is there any business arising from those minutes or any additions or corrections? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I just would like to see if we have an update regarding the letter to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services regarding RCMP funding formula for Jasper.
Does anybody have any comment on that?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through you to Councillor Melnick. I was going to raise this as well. The update is that it hasn't gone out, and I'm going to suggest that at some point we institute a motion action list for the mayor. This is an action that was directed, but it's not on any motion action list, and I overlooked it. So I did note it reading the agenda in preparation for today's meeting, and so I will attend to it, but it has not yet been done.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ireland. Can we have an approval of the agenda then? Okay, sorry. Are there any delegations today? I don't see anybody. No. Any correspondence? No correspondence. New business, the Jasper Cenotaph update.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger and Council. So the item before you is indeed the Jasper Cenotaph update, and I'm very pleased to say that the committee has met several times and progress is going along swimmingly. And the recommendation before you is that committee receive the report for information and direct administration to continue to support the Legion in the Jasper Cenotaph project. Alternatively, committee could direct administration to undertake additional work related to this project, or committee could provide any other alternate direction to administration. The background, in the 2026 budget deliberations, Council received a request from the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 31 for $250,000 in funding to support improvements to the Jasper Cenotaph, and Council subsequently added Cenotaph replacement project as an unfunded item in the amount of $240,000 in the 2027 year, and directed administration to work with the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 31 to develop a way forward regarding the Jasper Cenotaph and return to a future committee meeting with recommendations. We have, in fact, completed the initial work requested by Council, and we have established a collaborative process with the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 31. to support further development of the Cenotaph project. This work has focused on clarifying the condition of the existing Cenotaph and clarifying the information required to advance a potential improvement project and the next steps required before the project could be considered for implementation. While the existing Cenotaph is showing signs of wear and would benefit from improvements, administration does not understand the structure to be at risk of imminent failure or to present an immediate risk to the public safety. As a result, the project is best understood as a planned improvement to an important community space rather than an urgent replacement or emergency repair. At this stage, the project is not ready for a municipal funding or implementation decision. Additional information is required to define the project scope, confirm technical requirements, and understand the total project cost. Developing concept drawings and obtaining quotations will allow the Legion to prepare a project proposal with sufficient information for future consideration by committee and council. Which I should say that work is ongoing. They have engaged several different consultants, if you will, and they have already some drafted plans. So the work is proceeding at pace. Administration has also clarified that the Jasper Cenotaph may be eligible for federal funding intended to support community cenotaphs and memorials. There had been a perception that the project would not qualify for Veterans Affairs Canada funding. However, administration understands the Legion can apply for federal funding for eligible cenotaph-related improvements under the current system and state of that location. Other funding options may include provincial grant programs, the Legion or Poppy Fund contributions, community fundraising, corporate sponsorship. A funding approach that includes non-municipal sources would reduce reliance on municipal funding and provide council with more complete information if a future municipal contribution is requested. Administration will continue to support the Legion with advice and technical input. If the project advances to a stage where municipal funding, staff labor, project management, use of municipal assets, or implementation support is requested, the municipality's role will need to be defined in accordance with applicable policy and brought forward for council consideration. The recommended approach allows the Legion to continue to develop the project while administration provides support with existing resources. The approach does not commit municipal funding or staff resources beyond current capacity, and it allows future decisions to be based on a defined scope, costs, funding opportunities, and identified municipal responsibilities. Committee could direct administration to undertake additional work at this time. This alternative may advance the project more quickly, but no specific additional municipal work has been identified that is required before the Legion completes the next stage of project planning. The committee could also provide alternate direction, including direction related to municipal funding for implementation. However, that approach would require more complete project information before administration could provide a clear recommendation. For these reasons, administration recommends the committee receive the report for information and direct administration to continue supporting the Legion with the Jasper Cenotaph project within existing capacity. There are at least 3 direct connections to your strategic plans, including leverage recreational cultural opportunities and spaces to increase community connection, invest in practices and processes which support high quality decision making, and nurture relationships that advance the community's interests. The Jasper Cenotaph is an important community space that recognizes military service and sacrifice. Supporting the Legion in developing a well-planned, accessible project helps ensure the space continues to serve residents, veterans, and visitors. And the financial is in the future. So that's my report, and I'm ready for any questions council may have.
Okay, thank you, Director Reid. Are there any comments or questions from council? Councillor Frechette.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, and through you to Director Reid. Thank you very much for the comprehensive update on the Cenotaph project, Director Reid. I have a query about the possibility of a acknowledgement of young Morgan Kitchen, who lost his life in our fire. There's been ample discussion and requests and questions regarding the possibility of, when we do a retrofit there, whether it's with the Legion or along with the Legion or solely, that the municipality entertain an acknowledgement to the young fellow who lost his life in our fire. I don't know if there's been any discussion on that regard. Maybe a bit of an update on that, and perhaps something formal in the planning stages for maybe next year. I don't think there will be any work done this year. But certainly that would be an location that has been discussed at other meetings I've been involved with. Yeah, so if you have any opinion or update on what possibly could take place in regard of acknowledging Morgan Kitchen's legacy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through to Councillor Frechette. Thank you for the great question. Of course, this is one of our priorities as a whole municipality to ensure that we do honor that sacrifice well. And that has been discussed in our committee. We have a member of the Communities in Bloom committee on the Cenotaph committee. So we're getting all sorts of angles to make sure that project, the Cenotaph project itself, meets the best needs for the community. And we have discussed a couple of different locations for any subsequent memorial that could be installed. I cannot say that there are future plans that are confirmed yet that I could give a date on. And I don't know if CAO Given knows any other additions to that, but we are discussing it as a possibility connection for sure.
Thank you for that, Director Reid.
CEO Given.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Roger. I can also report, we've consulted with the provincial government. Obviously, Morgan was an employee of the Alberta Fire Service. They actually have a monument and a recognition to him as a part of their forest training center in Hinton. So there is already a recognition for the agency that he was serving. And so that's been a part of the discussion as well. So I can appreciate that there's a desire and an intent from the community and from some portions of the community. And the provincial government has made formal recognition of Morgan in the place where they do that for members of that agency. So there may be a little bit of a differentiation between those who served through military service, recognized at the Cenotaph, and Morgan, who served the community and Alberta through his service in the Alberta Fire Service. So that is, and he's appropriately recognized there already.
Okay, thank you, CEO Given. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through you to Director Reid. Thank you for that update. I was interested in your terminologies. You said it was going swimmingly. I thought you might have said it was marching along. I do have a question. I'm really happy to see that refurbishment to the Cenotaph might be eligible for federal funding. I thought that part of that might be contingent on whose land is it on, and recognizing that it's all federal land in some sense. My recollection is that where the Cenotaph sits used to be a road allowance, and whether that is land that has now come into the municipal domain by virtue of various agreements, or whether that's still federal, or whether it belongs to the Legion in some sense, seemed to be a factor in the determination of eligibility. So has that issue been resolved?
Deputy Mayor Roger, through to Mayor Ireland, thank you. Another great question. And the short answer is we believe so. The proof will be in the pudding when the application goes in. But I want to maybe take a pause here and thank Directors Donaldson and Director Sanders for their contributions to ensuring that we understand the lay of the land directly, and also ensuring that we have reached out appropriately to make sure that we have that full understanding of not just sort of what we would call the geography or the leases involved, but also at the federal end, what does Veterans Affairs need? So we believe we've got a path forward. It will come to when the grant application is either accepted or denied, but we believe we've got that sorted. And to your first point, I will say once a lifeguard, always a lifeguard.
All right, thank you for that. And just related, at budget time last fall, my recollection is that Council allocated an additional $10,000 for immediate repairs if required. And I take it then that that sum still sits there unused, but could be available if stones start to fall out of the Cenotaph.
Deputy Mayor Roger, through to Mayor Ireland, that is absolutely correct. So we've had an independent assessment of the Cenotaph. And again, it's not imminently crumbling. And so if it were to deteriorate before we get this project fully engaged, then yes, that's what that fund or sum will be used for.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, and through you to Director Reed. Firstly, I will thank the Mayor for bringing up the question about the discussion that occurred on November 18th last year regarding the site. I would be more comforted if we knew before a grant application went in the actual status of that site. Listening to your answer, I don't know if we actually know right now the status of that site. And if I may, I think it's important before we do any applications. Second point I'd like to just bring up while I have the opportunity, and again, back to Mayor Ireland's comment about the $10,000. In the request for decision, we have a $10,000 discrepancy between point in the background, the first point being 250 and the second point being 240. And I wonder if that $10,000 is kind of in there, but I think we need to be consistent in our reporting of numbers for moving into the 27 budget year.
Deputy Mayor Roger, through to Councillor Melnick. I'll go in reverse order. So the 250 that was requested was 10,000 was taken out and put into capital. So that 10,000 exists in capital so that we can do the work should it be required that Mayor Ireland referenced. So then we get 250 minus 10 is 240. And so the project as it sits is 240 because we're assuming we're going to do that $10,000 work at some point. If we don't, it would stay attached to the project anyway. And then your first point, we do understand exactly the lease and the lay of the land. So we know exactly what portion is this, what portion is that, and all of it is municipally controlled. So given that fact, the municipal control of the entire site, though it is made up of two portions, given that municipal control, we are able to municipally say this agency works with our full approval on that land. And we believe that will take the grant application across the finish line. Does that answer your question?
It does, and thank you for the clarity on the difference between the $2 amounts. It wasn't necessarily apparent in the RFP, but I'm glad you've been able to clarify that, and I'm happy to hear that we have a solid understanding of who owns what on that corner to be able to move forward appropriately.
Okay, thanks for the discussion. Any further questions or comments on this? If not, could somebody make the motion as suggested? Councillor Waxer.
I make the motion that committee receive the report for information and direct administration to continue to support the Legion with the Jasper Cenotaph project.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? It's unanimous, that passes. The next order of business, 7.2, unsolicited donations policy.
Good morning, Council, Deputy Mayor. This report is before committee to recommend Council approve the proposed unsolicited donation policy. Earlier this year, committee recommended that the unsolicited donations received in 2025 be provided to the Community Society Caring Community Fund and asked administration to return with a policy for handling future unsolicited donations. Currently, there is no formal process. Each donation must be considered individually, which can lead to inconsistency and uncertainty. The proposed policy establishes a clear and consistent approach by directing all future unrestricted solicited financial donations to the Municipal Financial Stabilization Reserve. This does not remove Council's authority. Council will continue to decide how and when those reserve funds are used. The policy applies only to unsolicited financial donations such as cash, checks, or electronic transfers. It does not apply to grants, sponsorships, council-approved fundraising campaigns, or donations of goods and services. If a donation includes conditions or restrictions, administration may bring it to council for further consideration. This policy will only apply to donations received after council adopts the policy, and approving the policy provides transparency, consistency, and good financial governance while ensuring future donations are managed through the municipality's existing reserve framework. Attached to the request for decision is the policy should council have any questions or recommendations, and I am available should there be any questions surrounding the attached policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions or comments from council? Yes, Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. Through you to Director Malinchuk. A small item, as usual, but under the definition for unsolicited financial donation, I wonder whether it might add clarity if we changed it to say that it means money voluntarily given to the municipality without having been identified by the donor with a fundraising campaign. Because otherwise we could have a generalized request out there and we think money comes in as a response to that request. But unless the donor says so, we don't know. So for clarity, I'm thinking that if we receive money, typically a donor will have identified where they want it to go. But if they don't, then the policy should apply and it would go into the financial stabilization reserve. But rather than our subjectivity, we've got a request out, that money must be identified with that. I'm not so sure that that's always going to be the case. So I'm just proposing a slight change to force the donor to either identify or not what the funds are intended for. And if they don't, then that's an unsolicited donation. And I've asked you the question, but it's really just observation. So I leave that more for councillors to consider, I suppose.
Any further comments on that? It sounds correct to myself. Would the procedure be that we ask for a motion with the amendment added to it? Perhaps Mayor Allen could do that.
If there aren't any other questions for administration, I would make a motion that committee recommend council approve the unsolicited donations policy with an amendment to the definition of unsolicited financial donation to mean money voluntarily given to the municipality without having been identified by the donor with a fundraising campaign, sponsorship program, grant application, or other formal solicitation process.
Everybody understand the amendment? And if so, could we call for a vote? All those in favor? It's unanimous. It passes. Next item is the 7.3 Audit Services RFP Award. That's Director Malnichuk. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The recommendation is that committee recommend council award the 5-year audit services contract to MNP for the term of August 1st, 2026 to July 31st of 2031. The Municipal Government Act requires council to appoint an external auditor for the municipality. Our current auditor, Metrics, has provided audit services since 2011. Administration appreciates the quality of service they have provided over the years. A competitive request for proposals was issued earlier this year through Alberta Purchasing Connection, and 4 compliant proposals were received. Proposals were independently evaluated by 2 administration personnel and 1 external contracted consultant based on experience, service plan, cost, and references. MNP and the highest scoring proponent were virtually tied, and with only 1 point separating them out of a score of 200. Administration recommends MNP because they met all requirements, offered strong value, and their proposal is approximately 36,000, or sorry, just over 36,000, less over 5-year term. While cost was a consideration, the recommendation is based on the overall valuation, not price alone. Appointing MNP also provides the municipality with a fresh audit perspective after working with the same audit firm for approximately 15 years. The contract cost is within the approved budget, and administration believes this recommendation provides the best balance of quality, value, and independent oversight. Administration is therefore recommending that committee recommend council award the 5-year audit services agreement to MNP. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions or comments from council? Yes, Councillor Frechette.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. Just a comment. I like the idea that we're going to have a fresh set of eyes. I think that certainly never hurts. I think, and given the cost disparity, it's 36,000 over 5 years is not insignificant. Their scores are certainly a coin toss between the two of them. So I like the idea that we're going to move in this direction and have a fresh set of eyes look at this process. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Conscript.
I agree. I believe it would be good to change auditors or watchdogs, if you will. It looks good for optics that we're not cozying up with one firm, and yeah, I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through you to Director Melanchuk. And I too am supportive of the recommendation. However, I wonder whether when a scoring matrix is made in the future, whether it might be configured to include this very sort of thing. So if an opportunity for the municipality to benefit from a new perspective is valuable, then maybe that would have changed the points in the initial review of applications. Of course, that opportunity to get a fresh perspective has to be balanced against proven reliability of the contractor we had. But it just seems to me to add a step to the process after the evaluations to come up with a new metric for measurement, which is, oh, this would be good because it's a new perspective. I mean, if that's an important consideration, maybe it should be considered earlier. Not necessary for today's discussion. I'm happy to go with the recommendation, but if it's that important, significant enough to make the difference, then maybe it should be built into the evaluation matrix in the first place.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. Now to Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. Through you to Director Melanchuk. I was wondering if there is any legal requirement for us to occasionally turn over, or could we be with one auditor for years and for decades?
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Waxer, there is no requirement. However, we just see that it's a good process to have somebody new to evaluate the municipality and where we're moving forward. So we thought that might be something to look at. And yes, I agree with the mayor's recommendation that it should be maybe part of the criteria in going forward, but we did see that we've worked with them for a very long time, and it would be nice to have a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Malinchuk. And on to Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. And I'm not opposed to changing auditors. I fully support saving money. I'm just hoping that the firm that's being recommended realizes there's a learning curve taking on a new client and will not subsequently charge for the time it takes to understand us. We are post-fire. We have multiple layers of reporting to 2 different other governments. And while we do have it's great to save money with an auditing firm, I'm just hoping they truly understand what they're taking on and that we achieve the $36,000 savings over the 5 years.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a comment as well. It's the first time I'd heard today that we'd been with the other firm for 15 years, and it seems to me extraordinarily long. And certainly I agree with everybody that says there's an advantage to have a fresh set of eyes and different perspective on it. And I'm just wondering if perhaps we should be considering a policy limiting the length of time to something perhaps 10 years or so. Just a thought. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If none, can we have somebody make a motion here? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I would make the motion and that the committee recommend council approve the award of the 5-year audit services agreement to MNP for the term of August 1st, 2026 to July 31st, 2031.
Okay, any other comments? If not, all those in favor? It's unanimous and it's passed. The next matter on the agenda is 7.4, Yellowhead Regional Library Municipal Levy Increase.
Deputy Mayor Roger, I'll take that one on behalf of administration. In your package, you'll see information from Yellowhead Regional Library that proposes an increase to their levy rate to member municipalities. Administration is bringing this request forward on behalf of the organization. And our recommendation is that council approve the proposed increase and direct administration to schedule a special council meeting before the summer break to formalize that approval. The Yellowhead Regional Library it provides service to 54 municipalities, 44 public libraries, and 42 school libraries. Councillor Hall is our representative from Jasper on the board of the Yellowhead Regional Library. And at their March meeting, the trustees of the organization voted to recommend that municipalities approve an increase of the municipal levy from $4.85 per capita to $5.60 per capita to be effective in the new year. So that's a 75-cent per capita increase, and certainly administration will get into making the entire case for Yellowhead. This is an external organization, but I will bring to council's attention a few points that they made in their business case for the proposed increase. In particular, they note that there has been an 11-year rate freeze. So the rate hasn't been increased in 11 years. And so that would seem to be at least an important part of the context. Obviously, any rate that is at the same pace for the last more than 10 years, we've seen some pretty significant increases to inflation. So the total impact to Jasper would be an increase of just over $3,500 per year beginning in 2027. So this has no 2026 impact, and it would have a modest impact in 2027 if council chose to approve the proposed increase. In terms of process, YRL has asked for a written notice of municipal decision by July 30th. We are heading into council break, And so administration is recommending that council could, under our procedure bylaw, move into a special council meeting or direct administration to organize a special council meeting to formalize council's approval if committee saw fit to recommend that that council should approve that increase as proposed. I think, again, there's significant information from YRL in the package. Administration's happy to answer any questions around process. And I also appreciate that Councillor Hall may be able to speak to some of the reasoning behind the proposed increase. But again, from an administrative perspective, 10 years, more than 10 years without an increase to that rate seems like a reasonable justification, and recognizing that it is still quite a modest impact in the next year.
Okay, thank you, CEO Gibbon. Any comments or questions from council? Yes, Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through you to CAO Gibbon. All procedural stuff, not the merits of the request. Just reading the letter from YRL, July 30th just seems to be a date they selected. It has no legal significance from what I can read in the letter. So do we know what happens if we held this until, if there's a recommendation today and council decides it in the ordinary course of business, does it really make any difference? Should our process be disrupted because we're getting to this now? That's one question. Secondly, our decision is meaningless if they already have 2/3 of the members representing 2/3 of the population. So Jasper figures quite small in the overall scheme of things. Do we know whether, as we approach July 30th, they've already got the double majority, which means that we needn't get excited about bending our process because the decision we make won't affect the outcome. Anyway, do we have any information about either of those?
Deputy Mayor Roger for Mayor Ireland. So my understanding was that the date is not necessarily arbitrary. I believe it's actually set in their bylaws. And so there's a notice period to member municipalities by which member municipalities need to respond. And if the response is they don't achieve that double majority, then the board is required to do some additional looking at the budget. So again, I don't know all of the details, but that was my understanding. So I don't believe it was an arbitrary date. I believe that that's maybe spelled out in some of the governance documents of YRL. The YRL administration provided an update to me last week that says that they haven't yet hit that majority. And so they're just shy, I think, on the population threshold. And so Jasper's population would actually move them closer to that, or may even put them over the top on it. So I think Jasper's decision is material, and the date is not arbitrary.
Okay, thank you, CEO Gibbon. Any other comments or questions, council? If Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Roger. Yes, everything CEO Gibbon has said is correct. And as the rep for this board, I've had the opportunity to see all the work that goes on behind the scenes. This isn't a request for new programming. I think it's just about keeping the services that we already have. And for Jasper, for $3,500 a year, I think it's a really fair investment in this library system that our community really depends on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hall. If there's no any more questions, then, sorry, Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. My only comment is that perhaps it would be wise for them to look at more frequent and smaller increases, so that it's just an ongoing process, and that they're not putting themselves at risk and spending money from different pockets in the interim period.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Ireland.
Subject to any other questions from councillors, I'm going to propose a motion that varies a little bit from what is recommended, and only with respect to a special council meeting, and rather than directing administration to schedule something, Section 194 sub 4 of the Municipal Government Act allows a council to hold a special meeting without notice, without 24 hours notice to councillors, and without notice to the public in less than 24 hours, if 2/3 of councillors agree in writing to that proposal. So we can do that. I have a sheet here ready for signatures if everybody agrees. If committee is prepared to make the recommendation, then my recommendation is that we take a recess from this committee of the whole meeting, get everybody to sign this sheet for a special meeting, come back into session. We're still on the same Zoom program. We can conduct a special meeting right now and get this accomplished without the need for administration to schedule something else and for all of us to come back another time for another special meeting. We can do it in 10 minutes during a recess of our committee of the whole meeting. And so if I can see by the look in the eyes of councillors around the table that they would all be willing to sign this letter that I have prepared, then I would go ahead and make a motion. And that motion will be that committee recommend council approve the proposed increase to the Yellowhead Regional Library municipal levy and conduct a special council meeting before the summer break to formalize the approval.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ireland. That's the motion. All those in favor? It's unanimous and passed.
And if I could encourage then you as chair, Deputy Mayor Roger, to put us into recess. I can circulate this letter, and then when we reconvene, we can reconvene and conduct a special meeting and adjourn that, and then revert to our committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, that sounds fine to me.
Call a recess then.
We call a recess.
We are still in recess from our committee of the whole meeting, but I now have the signed consent of 100% of councillors to conduct a special meeting. So I will call to order a special meeting of Council of the Municipality of Jasper for July 14th, 2026 at 10:20 a.m. The sole item of business at this meeting is for council to consider a request from the Yellowhead Regional Library to increase the municipal levy for 2027. I have a motion that rather than relinquishing the chair in these odd circumstances, I will just see whether Councillor Waxer might make a motion and we can discuss it and then close this special meeting after a vote.
I make the motion that be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Jasper agrees to an amendment to Schedule C of the Yellowhead Regional Library Master Membership Agreement to allow for a municipal levy increase from $4.85 per capita to $5.60 per capita, effective January 1, 2027.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Waxer, does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland. I do support the motion. I also want to apologize to my council colleagues. I did receive the information from Yellowhead Regional Library with plenty of time to bring this forward, and somehow it slipped through the cracks, but I appreciate the flexibility today. And I also want to thank Mayor Ireland for coming up with a practical save the day solution. and we can have our council break.
If there are no other councillors who wish to speak to the motion, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. There being no further business for this special meeting of council, I would invite a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Councillor Melnick. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried, and we stand adjourned of this special meeting of council.
Okay, that special meeting is now adjourned. We're back at the committee of the whole meeting, and the next matter on the agenda is 7.5. It's the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center Year 2 Recovery Report, and Director Olthoff is here to lead us through it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. Good morning to committee. The issue before you this morning, or the matter before you, is the Year 2 Progress Report from the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center. I am bringing this report back, having presented it to committee 2 weeks ago. That presentation led to a fulsome discussion centered around the financial reporting section of the report and some requests for clarifications of that section. The recommendation before you today is to accept or to receive the revised Year 2 Progress Report for information. Quick background on the report to repeat some of the discussion we had 2 weeks ago. The report is built as an addendum to the Jasper Recovery Framework and is built around the same structure as the Year 1 Progress Report. That is, it focuses on 6 key recovery areas: debris removal, interim housing, rebuild, social recovery, economic recovery, and park recovery. It identifies discrete objectives around each of those 6 priorities and lists a number of key accomplishments under each of those objectives. Each accomplishment is categorized as being complete, ongoing, an area of future focus, and we've added 2 additional status categories this year, which are operational and updated. This amended version of the report makes no substantive changes to the main body, that update of those priorities, objectives, and activities. The amendments and edits are constrained or refer specifically to the financial section. And I'll give a brief overview of those changes. The first, in the intervening period between that first presentation and now, there was, of course, a very major funding announcement from the federal government with respect to recovery. So the financial section now includes a reference to that $520 million funding commitment from the federal government in the federal government funding portion of the report. It also includes a more detailed description of the allocation versus spent to date breakdown of many of those funds at the federal level. Some of the challenge of reporting on the finances of recovery are that funds arrive in various different ways, sometimes as regular budget allocations in the case of Parks Canada, sometimes as grant agreements, sometimes as contribution agreements that are paid retroactively. So the challenge for us was to report all of those various types of funding in a way that can be unified in a single table or a single report. There is in that section now a description of how non-recovery community support funds nevertheless support recovery. So things like the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is not explicitly a recovery fund, nevertheless addresses housing need and the recovery in terms of the physical rebuild of housing resources in the community. Moving to the Government of Alberta funding section, we have included a short description of the disaster financial assistance arrangements. Those are the arrangements by which the federal government provides funding to the province in support of the disaster recovery program, or more recently referred to as the HARP. The report also includes a clearer distinction between DRP and non-DRP funding support from the Government of Alberta, and includes a total of those non-DRP funding items from the Government of Alberta. So again, the main body of the report remains essentially unchanged. What we have tried to address in this edited version, or this updated version of the report, is the challenge of providing clarity around the various sources of funding, the total amount of funding that has arrived and supported Jasper's recovery to date, and some reference to additional allocations or commitments of funding for future recovery activities. I am, of course, very happy to answer any questions or provide more detail about the main body of the report if required, but I will stop there and accept any questions you may have. Thank you.
Dr. Olthoff, any questions or comments from council? Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Roger, through you to Director Olthoff. Thank you for the update. Very much appreciated to get that clarity. I'm still seeking just a tiny bit of clarity, but I won't suggest that anything needs to change. Is there equity in presenting the numbers from the federal government and the province in the document? And I reference in particular the first item under the federal contribution is $59.8 million for incident response and emergency operations. So that, I assume, is primarily fighting the fire on the ground at the time. And I know that early on, after the fire, there was an announcement from the province of $149 million, I think. So let's say $150 million. That was roughly, as I understood it, $50 million for their own firefighting expenses, 50 that had been sort of allocated for DRP funding, and we're somewhere in that, and then another 50 million of contingency. But I don't see here, and maybe I've just overlooked it, I don't see in the graph any credit directly to the province for that roughly 50 million that they spent on incident response. Is it there and I've missed it? There is, I will say, $25.5 million allocated under incident response, but it doesn't match the number that I recall from just public pronouncements by the provincial government.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Roger, to Mayor Ireland, thank you for the question. My understanding is that what you're speaking to reflects essentially the difference between what was the initial public announcement and what was actually allocated to the response. I don't know that I have much more to say about it than that. I hope that's a satisfactory answer.
More than satisfactory. The other item of detail that I have in, and again, just for clarification for myself, under the funding items, it says the subheading is Parks Canada rebuilding funding. There is interim housing, and then there is a box, 27.8 million recovery / building resource for other councillors. I'm on page 48 of our electronic agenda. There is a note there at the end in that second box, Jasper Field Unit revenue replacement. And if you go down to the next page, there is an item, rent and license relief, 15.2 million. So that is, I think, the October 2024 announcement that there would be that $15.2 million of land rent relief. And absolutely, that's a wonderful thing that Parks Canada did for us. But is some of that amount included in the $27.8 million of revenue replacement for Parks Canada, so that one covers the other?
To Deputy Mayor Roger, to Mayor Ireland. This financial reporting section from Parks Canada has gone through rigorous review to the highest levels of the financial portion of that agency. And I think that gives me, at the very least, confidence that they have done their due diligence and ensured that there is no double counting of any funding commitments. With respect to Parks Canada's revenue generation, there are, of course, many sources of cost recovery that Parks Canada would normally engage in, including gate fees, camping fees. So I think recognizing that the rent and license relief is referred to specifically in the second table does not necessarily obviate the possibility or the reality that there are other sources of revenue generation that had to be offset or accounted for in other funding streams.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the challenges faced by all levels of government accounting for all this funding. I was just looking for personal clarity and information that I can pass along to residents when they ask. So thank you very much for that. Those are all the questions that I had.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Constant.
This is just, thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through to Doug. I just goes to my addition to the agenda on parking. And I do notice on page 41 of the agenda, Year 2 Recovery Progress Update, Priority 3, it does have a reference to develop and consult on community residential parking strategy. And it's labeled as a future focus. I appreciate that being part of the JRCC. And I'm just worried, like, I'm not worried, but I think we have to start thinking about it now as opposed to the future, and just bringing that point across for our later discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, and through you to Director Olshoff, and just a little more discussion on the rent and license relief of the $15.2 million, which was announced in late 2024. I just want, for the record, to indicate that rent and license relief, from my understanding, was for all leaseholds in Jasper National Park. So I can refer to a number of businesses outside of Jasper who are receiving that rent relief for the time period. I think it's a 2-year period. And that $15.2 million should not be viewed as direct to the Jasper town site, but as overall relief to all of the businesses operating outside the town site as well, which is fairly substantial because a number of businesses were contributing a percentage of gross revenue. And I believe that's what that announcement was when it was announced again in October of 2024. And I stand to be corrected.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? If not, would anybody be prepared to make the motion as suggested? Councillor Waxer.
That committee received the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center Year 2 Progress Report for information.
All those in favor? It's unanimous and passed. The next matter is 7.6 Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation Annual Written Shareholder Resolution.
I'll be handling that one, Deputy Mayor Roger. Thank you very much. As council knows, the Municipality of Jasper is the sole shareholder of the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation, or the JMHC. At the JMHC board meeting, the board recently passed its annual director resolutions, and on July 9th, just this past week, the board held its annual shareholder meeting where the corporation reviewed the proposed annual written shareholder resolution, the 2025 audited financial statements, and the 2025 annual report, which are all attached to this RFD. In terms of process, Council has policy B123, the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation shareholder policy, that describes how the municipality can exercise its rights as a shareholder. We have talked through this challenge before, but maybe I'll just refresh the public. The corporation operates at the direction of its shareholders. There is only one shareholder, that is the municipality of Jasper. And the way that the municipality exercises its control is by making resolutions at the council table, which are then translated into shareholder direction to the corporation. And we do that by way of these written resolutions. So the actions that in a typical corporation might happen at an annual general meeting of the corporation, where shareholders would vote in a traditional fashion, can be handled for the JMHC with written resolutions that come to the council table. So the board is providing some information. Again, I know that the board went through a bit of an overview with some members of council who were able to attend in the last week. But the annual report obviously runs up to the end of 2025. The largest project and most significant thing for JMHC in 2025 was the ongoing progress on the Connaught below market housing development. The annual report contains some information about the project, its composition, the different funding requirements that the project will ultimately have to meet. And in the audited financial statements, you can see how the advancement of that project really changed the financial situation of the JMHC. The organization's assets increased from just over $181,000 at the end of 2024 to $8.25 million at the end of 2025 in this audited financial statement. At the same time, construction in progress reached just under $4.5 million by the end of 2025. And so we can see that the organization is really maturing and that capital expenditure for the Connaught below market housing development apartment project is really starting to show up in the books of JMHC. I would note that the organization's financial statements are slightly different than those that council would be used to seeing. The municipality financial statements are structured under PSAB, the Public Sector Accounting Standard, a standard for public sector entities, where the JMHC's financial statements are presented in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards, which is typically used for corporations. So just some slight differences. But the auditor essentially presents a clean bill of health for the organization and reports that the audited financial statements present fairly and in all material respects the financial position of the corporation in accordance with required accounting standards. So a clean bill of clean audit, as they say. I would, other than, so the recommendation is that council authorize the annual written shareholder resolutions, which in essence do three different actions. They confirm the shareholder's appointment of directors to the board. They confirm the shareholder's appointment of an auditor for the upcoming year. And they confirm receipt of the financial statements and notify the corporation the shareholder does not require delivery of a copy of the statements for the most recent fiscal period. So they're really, some of those are more housekeeping. But again, this is business that might typically happen at an annual general meeting. But the way that our municipally controlled corporation is structured and the council policy means that they come here as a written resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions about the report. I'll also note two smaller items. Second recommendation is that council receive the annual report and audited financial statements for information. Once committee and council receive that, they would be posted to the municipality's website under JMHC, so they'd be available for public information, just and added transparency. And finally, I'll note, given the discussion earlier on in the council agenda with respect to the municipality's appointment of an auditor, which is different than the one that we'd used previously, council as shareholder may wish to consider item number 2 in the written resolutions. The recommendation was that Metrics be appointed for an auditor for the upcoming year. Council has the authority to decide whether you may wish to synchronize that appointment so it's the same auditor as is being recommended for the municipality, or the corporation is independent and is allowed to have a different auditor. There's no requirement. Ultimately, the audited financial statements of the corporation are rolled into the municipality's audited financial statements. There's a relationship between the two, so that can be some benefits to having the same auditor, but is not required. So council does have some latitude as shareholder to decide what you'd wish to do to see whether have that alignment of auditor or continue for the next year and consider whether you want to see alignment in a future year. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions about the report.
Okay, thank you, CEO Gibbon. Any questions or comments from council? I have a question. What would be the cost saving if we chose MNP to be the auditor? Would there be a significant one?
Deputy Mayor Roger, I can't answer that at this time. JMHC hasn't sought quotations from other auditors, so I can't assess whether the price from MMP would be, or from any other auditor, would be lower than the current audit services. I think that there are likely some efficiencies to be had by the same audit team investigating both organizations' books and processes, but I can't speak to any sort of whether that would be a material amount or not.
Okay, no other questions on this matter? Sorry, Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, and I'm sorry I've lost my place, but both my questions relate to the value of land. And so as I read the financial statements, the land as an asset to the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation is recorded at fair market value, regardless of the fact that it was a nominal value that was actually paid for it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then I saw an indication, and this is where I'm struggling to find it, but it might be in the report from Ms. Pelche. But there's a suggestion that the value is deferred as an annual revenue, and I don't follow what was meant by that, how a capital asset like land could be reflected over time. And I apologize, it's in that report, but I just can't put my cursor on it right now.
Deputy Mayor Roger, I think for Mayor Ireland, I think the spot where you want to put your cursor, the reference that comes up, it certainly is recognized in the audited financial statement, but in the RFD, under the audit section, audit highlight section, there's a bullet point that says there are 3.57 million in deferred capital contributions, including the land contribution. So I think that may be where you caught that reference. And I am not particularly confident in speaking about this, but my belief is that with some types of contributions from an audit perspective, they are they're being recognized over time as the asset has a value over a period of time. So rather than receiving all of the value in a single year, it's spread out over a number of years. If council or the shareholder wanted to get more details from the auditor, certainly we can ask them to provide some comment on that. That would obviously provide a better indication than what I'm giving.
Thank you for that, CEO Gibbon. Yeah, I found the reference at last. I thought I had highlighted it earlier. So it is under the financial report, the treasurer's report, and it's the concluding sentence of the second paragraph where it earlier refers to contributions, and then it says these contributions will be recognized as revenue over the life of the related asset. And so a capital asset has a value for sure, but to recognize that value as revenue over the life of an asset seems odd to me, but that's what that report seems to say. And if at some time, just speaking as 1/7 of the single shareholder, I'm confused as to what that means and how it appears in the financial statements to record revenue. Is that over like a 42-year lease term that it gets divided up? Because the value of the land is still going to be there at the end of that 42 years. So I'm quite confused by the statement.
Deputy Mayor Roger, administration can certainly, so this will be an ongoing issue for the organization. It may be the difference between the public sector accounting and the international standard that JMHC is required to operate to. We can absolutely bring back additional information either following the council meeting or for future years audits to provide additional clarity. But that will be a difference on an ongoing basis. So happy to work with the auditors and the treasurer to find an answer that's satisfactory to council and clarifies the issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. And this might get a little mundane. We're being asked to approve of the annual resolution in writing of the JMHC, where the appointment of auditors is done at an independent meeting, and I respect that we could possibly harmonize our auditors. I don't think we as council could change that at this meeting because the board has already approved Matrix Group as the auditors. And on that same document, I see we have 2 people who are going to sign on behalf of the municipality, and I'm assuming that'll be our 2 council appointed directors.
I'll maybe speak to the second part of that first. It's actually the policy that I referenced, policy B123, that specifies who can sign on behalf. And I believe it's the mayor and a council member or the deputy mayor and a council member. So it is 2 council members, and one of which should either be the deputy mayor or the mayor. So not necessarily the council member appointees. The written resolutions in writing. So the board has made a recommendation to the shareholder. And so this happens in regular corporate contexts where there will be board recommendations and then they're voted on by shareholders. Not every board recommendation is passed by shareholders, and shareholders have the right, to, at an AGM is where these would typically happen, to put forward shareholder resolutions. So again, our process is slightly different given the complications of a municipal government being the single shareholder. So for all intents and purpose, we can consider the meeting today and council's deliberation over the written resolutions as the AGM. And that's the place where shareholders make the final decision. So the board may have made a recommendation, which is what's reflected here. It's up to the shareholder to exercise your judgment about whether you want to accept the board's recommendation and pass it as a resolution in writing, or whether you want to vary it.
Thank you for that. And again, thank you for that. Bit mundane. Page 68 of our agenda, we have a document with a signature, a date, and a title. And the next page, page 69, we have an opportunity, or there was an opportunity, for 2 board members to sign on behalf of the board, but there's no reference of which directors they are. And I'm just wondering, as best practice, in the future, if we should add a line where you could write the name of which director or which individual signed and potentially add a date. Just for clarity in the future, 10 years down the road, we may be asked about this. And again, I'm not at all cognizant of the legality around all that, but I would suggest that, the more clarity we could give at the beginning of anything that we do is probably better for the future.
Thank you, Councillor. I have one other question just regarding what we've talked about already regarding the auditor. And if we don't know the costs and what's involved, is it appropriate to be appointing one without knowing that information? And perhaps this should be put over to another meeting so that information can be received.
Deputy Mayor Roger, absolutely, that's council's right. As shareholder, you're there may be some requirement for the shareholder to take certain steps on a regular basis, but I believe we would have time to investigate that. So if the shareholder wanted to give direction to investigate other alternatives and the costs associated with that, that's something that you could do.
Any other comments? Mayor Ireland?
The financial report, thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger, through you to CAO Given. The financial statements before us, obviously prepared by Metrics. So they had been appointed at some earlier point by, I presume, the shareholder. And at that time, was it an appointment for more than 1 year, or would it just be an annual appointment? But obviously, we went through this exercise at the formation of the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation, and at a meeting of shareholders that was determined. And I'm just wondering whether there are contractual obligations already existing that would virtually compel us to not breach the contract and retain the engagement for whatever the period of time is.
Deputy Mayor Roger, in speaking with the treasurer, their previous appointment was only for 1 year term, and so there's no ongoing obligation.
Okay, thank you. Well, I guess we have to decide how to proceed here. Is anybody prepared to make a motion regarding this matter? Mayor Ireland.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I am prepared to make a motion that, and do make a motion that committee recommend council authorize the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation annual written shareholder resolution as presented, and that committee recommend council receive the Jasper Municipal Housing Corporation 2025 annual report and audited financial statements for information. Speaking to the motion, it is, of course, open to any councillor to ask for division of the question. So if there are outstanding issues with respect to authorizing the resolution, which includes the appointment of the auditor, then that could be separated from receipt of the audited financial statements. But speaking to that issue, I recognize there might be some benefit in perhaps an RFP for audited financial services and send it out to various people, but all of that will take time. And it could be accomplished after we have approved this. So it would, in effect, extend the term for the existing auditor for 1 year, but give us lots of opportunity to go to the market if we choose, because otherwise I think this gets delayed. If we're going to do a proper job of evaluating the market, we will be at least past the end of summer before we do that. And in the meantime, we haven't made any progress. So I'm content to have a motion that the shareholder approves the appointment of Metrics for now, but that's not in any way to limit us from going to or having the board go for an RFP to reconsider it. But as I say, we could easily separate the two parts of the motion and vote on them separately and deal with each of them separately.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I would support that. I think that if we try to change auditors right now, all the work that's been done up to date would have to be repeated by some new auditor, and that if we give them perhaps one more year, and during that next year, we ask for submissions from other people, just so we know if we're getting the better deal or not. That would be the way I would approach it. Anybody else have any comments on it? Councillor Frechette?
Yes, I would agree with your feelings, Deputy Mayor Roger. I think indeed we it's kind of late in the game to do that. I think we can certainly explore other options next year and get this piece of it completed.
Councillor Waxer?
I also concur. I think it's best to let it go for this year and make a plan for next year.
Okay, if there's no other comments, the motion by Mayor Ireland, I think it's fairly clear. We have a vote on it then? Approval? It's unanimous. It's passed. There's an addition to the agenda by Councillor Conscoot regarding residential policy. Make that 7.7 if he wishes to speak on that, please. Residential parking, I meant.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I'd like to bring forward, I've been thinking about this for a few months, and quite a few, and it doesn't seem to be going away. But I'm concerned that with all the development that's happening in Jasper, in the West End, and all the new net units, enlightened parking regulations, I think there's going to be a lot more vehicles than what there is parking places for people. And I think we all take it for granted that, or the public in general, think living in Jasper that they should be able to have a parking place like close to their home. And whether they should or not, I don't think is the question right now. And we could say it's not our problem, but really it is our problem. We need to have a place for people to park, or at least to understand why they don't. I don't know. I do have some ideas of solutions and stuff, but that's not really my job to do. So I'd like to know what some ideas are, how we can have everybody have a place to park. And I realize that street parking isn't people's right. It's not their property to park in front of their house. It's not whether it's legal, whether it's the right thing. And I think the more vehicles that come, and like if there is an open spot, people will start using them, and that'll create quite a lot of controversy, which will get left on our lap. So if we can get ahead of this, I'd like to try to think of some solutions. I'd like to make some sort of motion to direct administration to look into where people are going to park. Like I say, the transition period, like what would have took 50 years to do all the building we're doing, and for people to get used to taking the transit system, and as we put in new streetscape downtown and bike racks for people to be comfortable taking their bikes, we don't have that luxury to ease into it, so to speak. It's going to be thrown on our laps like bang one day. So I'd just like to get ahead of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conscoot. Any other council members wish to comment on this? Councillor Frechette.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. And I agree with Councillor Conscoot. We do have an obligation to focus on our parking issues. That there's no question that they're going to be exacerbated over the next 2 or 3, 4 years. I mean, we're seeing an immense amount of density put in every neighborhood. It's fair to say. I think this just shines a light on the importance of our transit system. It has to become part of our day-to-day lives. We have to realize that eventually we're going to foul our own nest. We're not going to be able to park in our street. We're not going to be able to park downtown. So I think that there's a number of projects afoot, certainly to look at a complete review of our town trails, how we use them, how we find them. We have to invest in some infrastructure changes that people can actually get around the community on bicycles or walking. The idea that you don't know where the trails go is in our community will not be acceptable in the long term. We have to be able to understand where they go, how we get there, and where we park our bicycles, where we can access the downtown core without using our vehicles, and something that makes sense. It's not reasonable that we have people not be able to drive and at the same time not give them an alternative that is effective and functional. So I agree. This is part and parcel of what we're going through here. We're going to really have to focus on how we use our downtown core in our neighborhoods. This is a crossroads period. I mean, there's no question. The density is going to go up exponentially, and it is on our lap. We have to make sure that people can access other modes of getting through our community without their vehicles. So I think we've got a number of thrusts underway already with our transit, and certainly there are other projects that are going on behind the scenes in terms of the trail system locally in town. So certainly through the community in Bloom, we're looking at different ways of finding our trails in town to see where they go and how we can use them effectively. Thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. And I want to thank Councillor Consrud for bringing this forward. I think it's a really important conversation to have. We know that Jasper is changing. We're adding more housing than a community normally would, and that comes with new parking pressures. And I understand why residents would be concerned. They want to be able to park reasonably close to where they live. I don't know if the solution is to simply build more parking everywhere. We've invested, as Councillor Fouchette was saying, heavily in transit. We're improving cycling infrastructure. We're working toward a community where people have more choices in transportation. I don't want to lose sight of that vision. I wonder if there's value in taking a bit of a wait and see approach while monitoring what's happening. And if we start to see real pressure points around parking, we may be in a better position to respond with solutions based on evidence rather than assumptions. And I don't want to lose sight again of the transportation goals that we've set. But I do appreciate this coming forward because it's going to be a challenge for us. And so thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I agree with Councillor Hall and thank Councillor Consrud. This will be, I think, a forever issue for our community. This was a matter before the previous council, but it's new and it's appropriate to raise it with a new council. There was, I think, considerable information made available to previous council roughly a year ago when the recommendations were made regarding, well, maybe it was a year and a half ago, regarding densification. And the underlying principle at that time was that housing for residents would take precedence over parking of vehicles. And so densification was permitted and in fact encouraged. I don't think that it will be exponential. We won't get 2 times the housing that we had, but we will certainly get increased density. And we're seeing that already. And that fulfills exactly the intent that we have to house residents, and housing residents was considered by previous council to take precedence over where they park their vehicles. if there is something that they can sort out on their own, that will be where they can park. But they can't sort out on their own where they will live. And so we lean that direction. I would perhaps encourage administration to share that previous parking and housing information with this council, so councillors can become more familiar with that. And then if this council chooses to revisit the issue, that's certainly a prerogative for this council. But the information, I think, to a large extent, is already there. And so, Councillor Consgrude, you were indicating perhaps a direction to provide some information. And I'm supportive of that. I think that information is already available. It can be recirculated. And then if there is more required, we can ask more nuanced questions about it. But I think that everybody should be working from the same information. And I would just perhaps ask Mr. Given whether I am right in my recollection that when we considered the rezoning or the densification issue sort of more generally in the concluding year of previous council, whether that information was collated in some way that would be easy to distribute at this point.
Deputy Mayor Roger, so I would say that there absolutely was a discussion about that, as Mayor Ireland is recollecting, and by my memory, the way it was resolved as a recognition that it was an issue that would need to be dealt with, and that it would be future work, and so. We can certainly see what information was circulated at the time, and if council wanted to direct administration to circulate that, that's something we can certainly do. And it may not necessarily yield an answer to what's the plan, because I think there was a recognition that that was planning work that would need to be done. And that's why, as Councillor Consrud observed, that, I think that's why it's reflected in the JRCC future work to be done. And so council, could also direct administration to provide an update on the status of that work. It's sort of, there's something identified in the year 2 status report that says that will happen in the future. It would not be unreasonable for council to say, well, when in the future will that happen? And for administration to provide an update. So I think we could do both. If council wanted to direct us to provide any parking related information that came out of the density discussion last term, we can absolutely do that. If council wanted to direct administration to provide an update on plans to have that more detailed discussion or to do that planning work, we could also do that, or we could do both of those, whatever council would like to direct us to do.
Thank you, CEO Given. I had a question, just a specific one. There was some discussion before about changing the right of people to park downtown. Right now, apparently people can park 8 hours moving their car around, and it of course uses up lots of downtown parking during the summer. Has that specifically been considered, or could that be part of this future direction here?
Deputy Mayor Roger, administration hasn't taken any steps to change parking regulation in town at this time. Obviously, council is aware that we've had discussion about paid parking and changing the rate. Council has separately directed administration to look at the potential of other changes to the paid parking program. But we have a number of layers of things that affect parking. Obviously, there's housing density, which suggests we get more people and the potential for more cars. We have the municipal bylaws that regulate how long people can stay on a public street at one time, and then we have the paid parking program, which regulates a certain area of town and how much we charge people for that and who gets charged and everything else. So they're all interconnected, and I think that's a part of the reason why there was an acknowledgement last term that the issue of parking has a whole bunch of different facets, and they all need to be considered how they work together. So administration hasn't independently made any changes to any of those single parts. We haven't made any changes to our bylaws that regulate how or where people can park at this time.
Okay, thank you. So is it, Councillor Conscript?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. A wise man did tell me not too long ago that he'd rather have a parking problem than a housing problem. And I chewed on that for quite a while. And I agree. That's better. But I think we have to do what we can to not have both. And I realize that it is going to be a problem. And, like downtown Edmonton or any place, like they're used to it. Like, you're going 4 blocks. You're not thinking of driving from your hotel to the casino because you just know there's no parking. In Jasper, we're not used to that. And, it's a 4-season climate, and, you got your, anyways, I won't get into that, but it's like, I have to know the people that don't want, they care more about the parking problem than the accommodation problem. And that's the thing, is like, there's lots of different people we represent, and the people that only want to go home and bring their groceries in like a short distance, they kind of feel like that's their God-given right. And quite personally, I kind of agree that we have got really used to being able to park in front of our house and, make a couple trips back and forth. And that is going to change when we got high density units with way more vehicles parked next to just one family home. And I just have to be able to tell these, when people are concerned about this, and I have to be able to say, okay, then if that's what we're deciding, is like, no, you only should have one car. Anything beyond that is your problem. Like, and if it is their problem and they still have 2 cars, where is that other vehicle going to go, is what I'm asking. Like, I can just foresee it. Once we get into it, we're going to have to make some decisions that are rash. I think we should look into it before and try to eliminate all that we can. And I realize that we have to transition, but we need some time to do that, and we got to get in front of this. Quite honestly, that's what I believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Conscript. Is there any motion that is going to be coming out of this, or just as a discussion for information? Mayor Ireland?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. I am supportive of Councillor Conscript's intent here. And so if he's willing, I'm prepared to make a motion. I think he would like a motion out of this, and he's pondering what that motion would be. So I'm prepared to make a motion that committee direct administration to circulate to all councillors any information regarding residential parking which was made available to previous council, and that committee direct administration to provide an update regarding future residential parking plans at a future committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ireland. Any further discussion on that motion? If not, take a vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. It's passed. The next matter is the motion action list, which I understand CEO Given would speak to.
That's right, Deputy Mayor Roger. Thank you very much. I'll maybe just run through one item where we, in the printed agenda, have a recommendation for deferral, and then a couple items that administration would suggest could be removed based on the action today. The first item, administration is recommending changing the date of the Recovery Advisory Committee terms of reference to August. This is our last committee meeting or council meeting of July. I understand that the Recovery Advisory Committee has met to review their terms of reference, and Director Olthoff suggested that we'll be able to bring forward some recommendations based on that review and the Recovery Transition Framework, which will be coming to Council in the next month as well. So we see that one coming, the appropriate time coming as August. The Indigenous Relations Framework, we hadn't had that recommendation printed, but that should also be moved to August. That document was ready to go, but with the addition of the Canada Day events, the team that's working on that need a little bit of extra time. So we'd ask to have the Indigenous Relations Framework moved to August as well. Then moving down the list, the item related to the Royal Canadian Legion, administration has delivered a report on that. And so we'd suggest that that item could be deleted. On the next page, there was an item related to unsolicited donations. Director Melnichuk delivered a report on that and the draft policy, and so that item could be deleted. And then a little bit lower on that same page, there is the year 2 progress report, where Council asked for some amendments to the report, and that's been delivered here today, so that could also be deleted. So those would be the recommended amendments to the motion action list for Council's consideration.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comment or discussion on that? Is this a matter that needs a motion? Then we're prepared to make the motion that the new list as amended be approved. Councillor Waxer.
That committee approved the updated motion action list.
For the vote, all in favor? Unanimous, and it's passed. Thank you. The next matter is Councillor upcoming meetings, if anybody has any comments on that. Councillor Frechette.
Yes, I will be meeting with my board of the Community in Bloom on Friday, July 17th to start putting together, formalizing our judges who will be coming to town in late August.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Roger. On July 29th, I'll be attending the Jasper Partnership Initiative meeting along with Mayor Ireland, if he's available. We both sit on that committee. As well, I may be getting ahead of upcoming events, but the second anniversary of the commemoration of the fire on July 22nd, I'll be participating with the municipality as appropriate on that day.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Waxer.
Yes, I will also be attending on the 22nd, the municipal commemoration event. And on the 29th, I will be attending on behalf of the food bank a significant donation opportunity.
Thank you. Mayor Ireland.
On July 19th, 2001, residents voted overwhelmingly, in a landslide, in fact, to approve the establishment of local government in Jasper. And on July 20th of that year, the first council of the municipality of Jasper was appointed by order in council. So on July 20th of this year, we will be celebrating our 25th anniversary as a municipality. And so for all those who think that local government is worth having and worth supporting and worth fighting for, this will be an opportunity to go out and celebrate that we now have a quarter century of local autonomy under our belts in Jasper. Nothing is planned given the circumstances. It falls on the cusp of the fire disaster from 2 years ago, so we have nothing planned to recognize the event, but I encourage everybody to recognize the value of local government on July 20th and celebrate tremendously that we have the right to govern ourselves in this community when 25 years ago and for all time previous to that, that right had been denied to us. So something to make note of and celebrate on July 20th of this year, 25 years as a municipal entity.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors? No. For upcoming events, it's been alluded to already, but there's an addition on July 22nd. JRCC, I understand, will be at Commemoration Park doing a commemoration of the 2-year anniversary. It's from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and there's food and refreshments to be supplied, apparently. So hopefully people can attend that. Does anybody want to speak to any other upcoming events? No? Number 11 is adjournment. Is anybody prepared to make a motion that we adjourn? Councillor Frechette? All those in favor? It's unanimous. We are adjourned. Thank you.